You know, in our world today, the biggest, most important events often happen in complete silence, totally hidden from view. We're about to pull back the curtain on one of those events, a secret that was buried for 6 years in a remote desert, a secret that might just be the starting gun for a new and frankly terrifying global arms race. And you're going to want to stay till the end because some of the things I'm going to reveal in this explainer are truly shocking. All right, let's get back to the story.
So it all begins with what you could call a ghost signal. While the entire world was distracted by a pandemic, a tiny, almost unnoticeable tremor was picked up by a single sensor far away. It was a whisper that should have just disappeared into the normal background noise of the planet. But for a very small group of people, this wasn't a whisper, it was a scream.
2.75. Now in the Richter scale, that's practically nothing. You could be standing right on top of it and not feel a thing. But in the high-stakes world of nuclear intelligence, this tiny number, detected from hundreds of miles away, was a thunderclap. It was a sign that a global understanding, a moratorium that's helped for decades, might have just been broken. This is the story of that number, and why it's now threatening to unravel the fragile peace of our nuclear age.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's June 22nd, 2020. The location is Lop Nur, a desolate and infamous nuclear test site in China's Xinjiang region. For 6 long years, whatever happened that day was locked away in classified files. Then, boom, on February 18th, 2026, the silence is shattered. The US State Department declassifies a bombshell of a claim. What happened that day wasn't an act of nature.
So, let's break down the core facts, at least as Washington laid them out. At exactly 0918 Greenwich Mean Time, a seismic station over in neighboring Kazakhstan registered an event. Now, according to the United States, the signature of this event was unmistakably explosive. Their claim is incredibly direct and unbelievably serious. China conducted a secret, low-yield nuclear test, breaking a global understanding that's been in place since the 1990s.
But how could the US be so certain? And really, how could a nuclear explosion go almost completely unnoticed by the world's vast network of monitors? Well, the case was laid out by US Assistant Secretary Christopher Yu, a guy with a PhD in nuclear engineering. And he didn't just make an accusation, he walked everyone through the science of how you do it.
The heart of the American case really just comes down to basic physics. See, an earthquake is caused by tectonic plates grinding against each other. It creates these slow, rolling waves that kind of build up and then fade away. An underground explosion, though, it's the complete opposite. It's a single, violent, instantaneous burst of energy. And that creates a sharp, compressed wave, a singular jolt. According to Ye, the data from Kazakhstan showed exactly that signature. A jolt, not a roll.
Okay, but if it was an explosion, why didn't more sensors pick it up? Well, the US claims China used a really sophisticated technique called decoupling. Think about it like this. Imagine setting off a firecracker in your clenched fist versus setting it off inside a giant, empty oil drum. The sound is muffled, right? It's dampened. Decoupling is the nuclear version of that. You detonate your device inside a huge pre-dug cavern. The shock wave expands into that empty space before it ever hits the solid rock, and that dramatically cuts down the seismic signal. It's the ultimate game of nuclear hide-and-seek.
But this is where the technical stuff crashes right into raw geopolitical power. Because the US isn't just claiming a secret test happened. They're pointing a massive finger at when it happened. And believe me, in the world of great power competition, timing is everything. It's the message.
This timeline, it's just chilling. On June 15th, 2020, Indian and Chinese soldiers were involved in a brutal, deadly clash in the Galwan Valley, the worst border fight they'd had in decades. And then exactly 1 week later, on June 22nd, this supposed test happens. The implication here is huge. If the US is right, this wasn't some scientific experiment. It was a strategic signal, a flexing of nuclear muscle sent right after a bloody crisis with another nuclear-armed country.
Now, as you can imagine, an accusation of this size was never going to go unanswered. The second the US declassified its findings, it kicked off an immediate and furious diplomatic showdown. This is the moment that secret Shiver in the desert became a very public shouting match between two global superpowers. So on one side, you've got the American position, and it's delivered with this air of absolute scientific certainty. Assistant Secretary Ye's statement leaves zero wiggle room. For Washington, the seismic data is the smoking gun. They're not presenting this as a theory, they're presenting it as a fact that the world now has to deal with.
And then, on the other side, you have Beijing's complete and total rejection. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian fired back, calling the whole thing outright lies.
China's argument is that the US is just making up a crisis, creating a phantom threat to justify its own military buildup and maybe even restart its own nuclear testing. It's a classic standoff. One side's hard evidence is the other side's political manipulation.
So why? Why does this one tiny, disputed event from years ago matter so much right now? Because it's being used to justify a dangerous new reality. This isn't really about the past anymore. It's about a future where all the old rules that kept us safe from nuclear escalation are being systematically torn up.
And this accusation is landing in a terrifying new context. You see, for about half a century, we had treaties like New START that put guardrails on nuclear arsenals. Well, as of early 2026, those guardrails are gone. We are now officially in a nuclear vacuum. For the first time in decades, there is literally nothing legally stopping the major powers from building as many nukes as they want.
And against that backdrop, just look at this chart. Whether that 2020 test actually happened or not, what is completely undeniable is the staggering growth in China's nuclear arsenal. It went from an estimated 200 warheads back in 2020 to what intelligence agencies now believe is over 600 and growing fast. Washington is pointing to that 2.75 tremor and calling it the starting pistol, the secret beginning of an arms race that is now exploding out into the open for everyone to see.
All of which leads us to this final, really sobering question. Was that tiny hidden tremor the sound of a decades-long global understanding quietly snapping in two? Are we walking into a new, far more dangerous era where nuclear testing and building and threatening just becomes the new normal? The echo of that little 2.75 magnitude event is getting louder every single day, and we might have to face the answer much sooner than any of us would like.
So, what do you think? Is this conclusive proof of a broken promise, or is it a convenient story to fuel a new arms race? The answer to that is going to define the security of our entire world. For more deep dives into the critical issues shaping our planet, make sure to subscribe and follow our work.